A clearly unexcited Jane, holding a cup of palm wine, walked towards Fred. As she did, the putrid odor filled the air once again. People began whispering, covering their noses as usual. Jane was devastated and could not believe that what she feared most yet had befallen her. And she concluded in her heart that she would never be married. Once upon a time, in a peaceful village of Umuani, in Igboland, a quiet and serene community where villagers lived happily in harmony and oneness, there lived two beautiful childhood friends. Jane and Linda were very close friends who grew up together. They were almost like siblings, who were always seen side by side to each other. They shared everything from childhood mischief to their deepest aspirations. Due to some resemblances in their appearance, many thought they were blood sisters. Their bond was admired by many, as they seemed to embody the true essence of friendship, complementing each other's energy and zest for life. Among the two friends, who were breathtakingly beautiful, Jane was exceptional. Her flawless, dark skin shimmered in the sunlight, and her captivating eyes, deep and expressive, had a way of attracting and drawing people to like her. Her smile was radiant, and her presence exuded grace and charm, qualities that Linda did not possess. Everywhere they went, Jane was the center of attraction. Men would gather around her, eager to win her attention, some willing to do anything to have her attention. She enjoyed all the attention and admiration. She was a free-spirited person, who would always rush with excitement to share every new admiration and good news with Linda. One day, after receiving an expensive gift from one of her admirers, who cherished her so much, Jane went straight to Linda and showed the gift to her. "Linda, can you believe it? Johnson sent me this gift today after the gold necklace he bought for me last week. He is truly a good man with a good heart," she exclaimed. Linda smiled and congratulated her friend, but deep inside, a storm of emotions raged within her. "Why is it always Jane? Why do men act like I am invisible?" she wondered in frustration. The seed of jealousy took root in her heart, growing into a twisted vine of resentment. Though she hid her true feelings behind a facade of warmth, the bitterness gnawed at her, festering like a wound left to rot in the open air. But she shielded all that with a lovely smile and celebrated with Jane. One fateful day, a wealthy young man named Michael visited the village from the city. He was handsome, with the regal presence of an Igbo prince. His eyes held wisdom beyond his years, and his voice carried the authority of a leader. He was in the village to search for a wife. When Michael saw Jane, he was instantly captivated, as though the gods themselves had whispered her name to his soul. "She is the one," he declared with conviction, his eyes shining with certainty. "I must marry her, no matter what it takes." Michael approached Jane and they became friends. They dated for few months. Afterward, Michael decided to meet Jane's family for marriage introduction. Jane was highly overjoyed, and as usual she shared the good news with Linda, her friend. Linda was so happy for her, and she assisted Jane for the preparation of the occasion. One beautiful afternoon, the day of the marriage introduction, Michael's family arrived. Villagers and elders gathered and Jane beamed with joy, believed her dreams were finally coming true. The gathering was lively, with villagers arriving in their finest attires and elders seated with wise anticipation. The occasion was perfectly going well, not until Jane took a cup of palm wine to identify the groom, which was the moment of truth in Igbo traditional marriage ceremony. But then, an eerie shift occurred. A foul stench crept through the air, insidious and overpowering. Conversations halted, and laughter died on people's lips. There was total discomfort to everyone who was present due to the strong foul odor that covered the atmosphere. The guests squirmed in discomfort, covering their noses as a wave of confusion and disgust spread like wildfire through the compound. "Where is this terrible stench coming from?" a voice whispered through the crowd, laced with shock and unease. Jane was in total confusion, overwhelmed by the smell. Her countenance changed and she could not figure out what was going on and where the smell was coming from. To everyone's shock, the unbearable stench was coming from Jane. The once admired beauty now reeked of a foul odor so potent that people recoiled in horror, stepping away as if from a plague. The more she walked with the cup of palm wine in her hands, the more the smell. Gasps and murmurs filled the air as guests struggled to comprehend the sudden change. Michael's family, unable to endure the humiliation and disgust, hastily left, cancelling the marriage plans without a second thought. Jane was heartbroken, and her parents, who were as worried as her, tried to talk and comfort her. Days that followed, Jane secluded herself from people and often sat alone trying to figure out where the smell that ruined her day came from. Each time she remembered the ordeal, the disgrace and humiliation of that event, Jane often cried, and Linda, her friend, consoled her. It was so mysterious that immediately the marriage introduction ceremony was cancelled, the smell ceased, and Jane became okay. Her mother also did her best to encourage her and assured her that a man who would unconditionally love her would come her way one day. A few months later, another suitor came, and when Jane took a cup of palm wine to the groom as required, the smell filled the air once again. And the guests all left with their noses covered, and the marriage ceremony was cancelled again. It became a reoccurring pattern that each time a suitor came for marriage introduction, the same thing happened, and they would all run away. "Linda, why is this happening to me?" Jane cried. Linda held her shoulder, feigning concern. "Don't worry, my dear. God will see you through," she consoled, but deep down, she felt satisfaction. Jane's parents were devastated. They had done everything they could think of, visited native doctors, prayed at different shrines, and even fasted for days, yet the problem persisted. But they continued, giving her hope that one day she would overcome her predicament. Rumors spread through the village, with some saying Jane was cursed, while others whispered that she had offended the gods. Then next in the line was Fred, a handsome, well-to-do young man. He was a devoted Christian who fasted and prayed to God to direct him to a woman he would call his wife. He had midnight prayers for weeks. He also fasted, seeking God's divine direction for a wife. And God directed him to Jane. He was excited and blown away by her beauty when he first met her. They started a relationship, and along the line, Jane was uneasy that Fred wants to meet her family. The fear of her past ugly experiences overshadowed her. "Fred, don't you think it is too soon to meet my family for introduction?" she asked. "No, Jane, it is not. I have prayed and fasted time without number, and God confirmed that you are my wife. If so, there is no need to delay." "What are we waiting for?" Fred asked. "I will come with my people to see your family," he concluded. Why Jane was sharing with Linda the news of Fred's plan to come see her family, and her fears, she began to cry. Linda, another humiliation is about to happen again. Fred is coming with his family this week. I really love him and cannot afford to lose him like the previous suitors," she cried. "My friend, don't worry, God will make a way. If Fred is yours, no matter the obstacle, he will marry you. Stop crying," she encouraged Jane. The day of the marriage introduction came, and as expected, halfway into the ceremony, the inevitable happened. The unbearable odor began to spread in the air, and as usual the guests covered their noses and began to disperse. Fred's family members also left as they could not stand the smell as well. Unlike every other person and other suitors, Fred was different. Despite experiencing the terrible smell during the introduction, he refused to leave Jane. Jane could not believe that same smell had destroyed yet another marriage for her. As guests disappeared, Fred spoke to Jane kindly as he noticed how broken she was. "I know this is not ordinary," he said firmly. "Jane, I love you, and I will marry you no matter what. Don't let this steal your happiness," he stated. Jane's eyes welled with tears. "But Fred, my past suitors all left because of this. I don't want to put you through this shame. I didn't wrong anyone. I don't know why and where this smell comes from each time there was a marriage introduction. I have a strong feeling that this is a spiritual attack," Fred said. "I will fight for you and we shall come out victorious, I promise." That day when Fred returned home, he engaged in serious warfare prayer. He prayed and fasted for weeks, interceding for Jane and seeking for a divine solution. One night, as he was doing a midnight prayer, he had a revelation where he was instructed by an angel to proceed with the marriage no matter the challenges and allow God to perfect it. Meanwhile, Jane could not stop thinking that the gods were against her getting married. Day after day she cried. And her friend Linda continued comforting and encouraging her, assuring her that all would be okay. Linda showed great concern as a good friend should and always ensured that Jane had a shoulder to cry on. Few weeks later, to the surprise of many, Fred returned with his people to continue the marriage ceremony. Almost the entire village gathered, eager to witness the expected humiliation as always played out when a suitor comes. The elders sat, fanning themselves in anticipation of the inevitable disgrace. A clearly unexcited Jane, holding a cup of palm wine, walked towards Fred. As she did, the putrid odor filled the air once again. People began whispering, covering their noses as usual. Jane was devastated and could not believe that what she feared most yet had befallen her. And she concluded in her heart that she would never be married. As the smell increased, a voice from the guests murmured, "He will run. The groom will run. Just watch and see." But against all odds Fred did not flinch. He stood firm as Jane, who was totally unhappy, reached him and offered the drink, not knowing what his reaction would be. But to the surprise of everyone including Jane, with unwavering faith, Fred took the cup from her and drank the palm wine, signaling his acceptance of Jane as his wife. The moment he drank the palm wine and swallowed the last drop, something miraculous happened. The foul smell that had tormented Jane for long suddenly vanished instantly. The air became fresh again, and Jane's natural sweet scent returned. Immediately Jane realized what had happened. Her countenance changed, her face brightened up and was covered with a joyful smile. Gasps filled the crowd. "What just happened?" people asked in astonishment. They could not believe that by Fred's drinking of the palm wine, that the curse upon Jane could be broken. Then, suddenly, without any warning, Jane's best friend Linda screamed in agony, as if she was under attack by an unseen force. "I will confess. I will confess. I did it. I did it." Unknown to Jane, Linda, who always spoke kind words and comforted her as a concerned friend, was indeed a green snake in a green grass. She was entirely behind Jane's long suffering and numerous humiliations when suitors came for Jane's marriage introduction. All the time she was putting up a smiling face and pretending to care so much for Jane, deep inside, a storm of emotions raged within her. She was jealous of Jane. As she knelt down before the surprised villagers and elders, she confessed, "Yes, I did it. I did it. Why is it always Jane? Why do men act like I am invisible?" she alarmed, in frustration. The seed of jealousy had taken deep root in her heart, growing into a twisted vine of resentment. Though she masked her true feelings behind a facade of warmth, the bitterness gnawed at her, leading her to do the unthinkable to her childhood friend. As she spoke of her evil deed, All eyes turned to her. I was jealous. I was tired of watching Jane have all the good things. So I went to a witch doctor and asked him to stop her from ever getting married before me. He gave me a charm and told me to sprinkle it on her dress, and I did exactly as I was told. The day she wore it, her torment began and she started smelling each time a suitor comes for marriage introduction. The villagers murmured in shock and disbelief, while some of the elders shook their heads in disappointment. But I was warned, Linda sobbed. I was told that if a man ever truly loved Jane and completed her marriage rites despite her condition, that she would be freed and the curse would return to me. While she was still confessing, a foul stench filled the air, and suddenly, it was Linda who began to smell heavily. People covered their noses and backed away. Then, as if seized by an unseen force, she let out a loud cry and ran towards the bush, her mind lost and possessed by spirit of madness. Linda finally became a mad woman who roamed the bushes and forests of Umuani village. At a time, Linda was never seen in the village again. Some say she roamed the forest and wandered away from Umuani to a distant village, paying the price for her evil deed. Others believed the spirits that possessed her took her life as punishment. Jane and Fred's marriage was celebrated with joy, and people marveled at the power of love and faith. Jane regained her happiness, and their union was blessed with children and prosperity. The village elders declared it a lesson for all. Jealousy is a disease, they said. It destroys even the heart that carries it. Fred and Jane lived happily, their love growing stronger with each passing day. Their story became a tale told in the village to teach the dangers of envy, jealousy, and the power of true love and faith. And so, the story of Jane and Linda remained a warning that in life, what is meant for one can never be taken away by another, and most importantly that whatever we do, be it good or evil, will surely come back to us someday. This story also highlights the need for us to be mindful of whom we chose as friends. Despite Jane's suffering and humiliation, true love and faith prevailed. Fred's unwavering devotion broke the curse, revealing Linda's jealousy-fueled betrayal. Stripped of her pretense, Linda faced the ultimate punishment, banished by her own wickedness. Meanwhile, Jane and Fred's union flourished, proving that no evil can destroy what is divinely destined. So we should always remember that jealousy is a silent destroyer. It poisons the soul and leads to one's downfall. True beauty lies not in outward appearance but in a pure heart. No matter how long darkness lingers, light will always triumph, and what is meant for you can never be taken away. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please kindly support the channel by subscribing and commenting. Remain blessed.